The night they kicked us out of the house I paid for. I only took my toolbox and the ledger. For 20 years, that book held every receipt that kept them afloat. 3 months later, my sister, the one who took my room, called me sobbing. It wasn't because she missed me. She had just opened her first piece of mail addressed to the homeowner, a foreclosure notice. My name is Rachel Fox. I learned early that in Redridge, North Ashland, you are defined by one of two things: the dirt you inherited or the debt you collected. We had no dirt. Redridge isn't a town that builds things anymore. It's a town that rusts, a place where ambition comes to die, choked by the smell of the paper mill and the damp, gray fog that rolls off the hills. It clings to the county line like moss, forgotten by the state capitol. My timeline, the one that matters, the one that ended with me holding a foreclosure notice that wasn't mine, starts when I was 19. It stretches across 2 decades, to the day I turned 38. 19 years. 19 years of my life evaporated inside the walls of 214 Oakmere Lane. 19 years of funding a fantasy that was never, ever mine. Our house had a specific scent. It wasn't baking bread or Sunday roasts. It was the smell of stale Folgers coffee, burnt hours ago, cold and acidic in the glass pot. That smell mixed with the sharp, almost metallic tang of the ink on the collection notices piled on the entryway table. They were always blue or pale red. Those envelopes, designed to look urgent, designed to panic. My father, Gordon, was home, again. He'd lost his job at the lumber yard, the 3rd time in 5 years. This time, he said, it was automation. The time before, it was his back. The time before that, his supervisor. There was always a reason, but the result was the same. He specialized in a kind of defeated, heavy silence. He occupied his faded recliner like a ghost, the springs groaning every time he shifted. The television was his companion, murmuring about stock markets and political victories and a world that had left him behind. My mother, Elaine, fought the entropy. She was a cleaner, working hourly for the new money families building mansions out past the old quarry. She'd come home smelling of industrial-strength lemon polish and bleach, the chemicals failing to mask the scent of pure exhaustion. She moved through our house with a tense, brittle energy, wiping counters that were already clean, her lips a thin white line of permanent calculation. The calculation was always about money, how much we needed, how much we didn't have, and, after I turned 19, who would pay. That who was never my sister. Vanessa. Vanessa was the jewel. She was the family's one remaining asset, the one thing they polished in the hopes of a high appraisal. She was 2 years younger, but she lived in a different atmosphere, breathing cleaner air. While I was learning the precise weight of our impending utility shut-off notices, she was practicing scales on the second-hand piano that took up half the living room. That piano, it appeared one Tuesday. I came home from school, and there it was, blocking the hallway. Mom said it was an investment in her future. I later found the receipt. I knew exactly which of my paychecks had paid the moving fee and the first installment. Vanessa's days were a whirlwind of performative success. Debate club practice, honor societies, and endless glowing talk of the partial scholarship she'd secured to the state university. She was bright, she was charming, and she was catastrophically expensive. She was also exempt. Vanessa was the future, the lawyer-to-be, the one who would get us all out of Redridge. I was just the infrastructure. I was the silent, buried cable that powered the spotlight shining on her. My contribution started the month after high school graduation. There was no discussion of college for me. It was assumed. While Vanessa debated hypotheticals under warm collegiate lights, I went to work at ArcLight Components, the night shift. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., I stood at Assembly Line 4. The entire factory was a massive, echoing concrete box, bathed in the buzzing, sickly green-white of failing fluorescent lights. That sound, that high-pitched electrical zzzt, became the soundtrack to my youth. It drilled into my skull, the noise of my life being traded for component parts. My job was to guide delicate motherboards under a magnified lens, soldering microscopic connections, pin 8 to capacitor 3, pin 9 to the resistor, again and again. My hands, which were naturally steady and precise, became machines. I was good at it. My supervisor said I had the lowest defect rate on the line. I didn't know whether to be proud or horrified. I'd come home just as the pale gray dawn was breaking over the ridge. The smell of burnt flux and ozone, a sharp, metallic odor, would be ground into my skin and clinging to my hair. I'd walk through the front door, exhausted, just in time to see Vanessa leaving for her morning jogging class, smelling of fresh shampoo and opportunity. We'd pass in the hall. She'd give me a tight, pitying smile. I'd just nod, too tired to speak, and go to my small room to fall into a dead, dreamless sleep, the buzzing of the factory lights still echoing in my ears. I still remember the physical weight of that first full paycheck. It felt heavy, substantial, rectangular in its thin paper envelope. 76 hours. With time and a half for the weekend shift, I'd cashed it at the corner check cashing place. We didn't use banks. Banks asked questions and charged fees we couldn't afford. And I walked home, the wad of 20s and 10s a warm, proud lump in my jeans pocket. It was real. I had earned it. I was going to buy a real winter coat, one without a broken zipper. I was going to buy a bus pass. I was going to save for a basic electronics certification class at the community college. I found Mom at the kitchen table, the battlefield. She was surrounded by the familiar blue-windowed envelopes, a calculator by her elbow. She didn't look up when I came in, but her eyes fixed on the envelope in my hand. The mortgage is 3 weeks late, Rachel, and the light bill came. Final notice. I hesitated, my hand tightening on the money. I need a new coat for the walk to the bus stop. Mom. Coats can wait, she said. Her voice wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was flat, practical, absolute. We all have to contribute. This is house money. We're a family. And the family needs this. I pulled the money out. I watched her pull the bills from my envelope, her own fingers chapped and red from cleaning chemicals. She counted it, smoothing the bills flat on the table. She took all of it except for $40. For your gas and lunches, she said, a gesture of hollow generosity, as if she were granting me an allowance from my own labor. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just watched the line blur, the line between helping and being consumed, between contribution and sacrifice. It wasn't just blurred. It was erased in a single, silent transaction. That $40 didn't even cover half a tank for the week. The certification class evaporated. The coat would have to wait. My future was just paper, and she had just spent it on the past. That day set the pattern for the next 2 decades. It became the unspoken rule. My paycheck was no longer mine. It was the household's general fund, the emergency slush pile. And in our house, there was always an emergency. One February, when the temperature dropped to 5 degrees, the water heater burst. It was my paycheck, all of it, that paid the emergency plumber, the one who charged triple for a Saturday night call-out. When Vanessa needed 4 new, hardbound textbooks for her pre-law honors seminar, they're essential. Mom, I'll fail otherwise. He won't let us use the library copies. It was my accumulated overtime shifts that paid for them. I handed the cash directly to Vanessa, who took it without meeting my eyes. Thanks, she'd mumbled, already texting. I'll pay you back when I'm a big-shot lawyer. She never did. When Dad's cough turned into pneumonia, his COBRA insurance had lapsed. We didn't know until the emergency room admissions desk asked for a credit card, the copay, the antibiotics, the inhaler. It cost me almost $300. I paid it at the hospital pharmacy counter, the pharmacist looking at me with undisguised pity as I counted out the 20s. Electricity, water, the car insurance for the car everyone used but me, the property taxes, twice a year. I was the silent partner in a failing corporation, the only one injecting capital. I was an ATM mounted in the hallway, and everyone knew the PIN. Dinner conversations were the worst. They were the daily shareholder meeting, forums dedicated entirely to Vanessa's future. Vanessa aced her midterms, Dad would announce, stirring his instant mashed potatoes, a rare spark of pride in his eyes. Her professor says she has a real shot at a top-tier law school, Mom would add, beaming, pouring Vanessa the last of the milk. I'd sit there, my hands sore and stiff from the repetitive motion of the soldering iron, smelling the cafeteria food I'd microwaved for myself. I'd listen to them map out her glorious career, her corner office, her important cases, a future built entirely on the foundation of my night shifts. I wasn't a daughter, I was a utility. I was the plumbing, necessary, invisible, and only noticed when I failed to function. They consumed my money and my time, but I refused to let them consume my mind. My only escape, my only sanctuary, was the garage. It was cold, smelled of gasoline, old paint, and damp concrete, but it was mine, in the back corner, behind a dusty tarp and stacks of my father's old bald tires. I had my workbench. It wasn't much. An old wooden desk I'd salvaged from a curb, a second-hand soldering station I'd bought for $10, one far better than the cheap ones at ArcLight, and a collection of tools I bought one piece at a time with scavenged dollars. This was where I found myself. I fixed things. It started with the neighbor's broken toaster. The spring was jammed. I took it apart, cleaned the mechanism, and it worked. Then our old vacuum cleaner, which just had a clogged belt. I found a box of discarded portable radios at the factory dump, and I spent an entire month taking them apart, cleaning the contacts, resoldering the bad connections, and aligning the tuners until every single one of them worked. The work was clean. It was logical. A broken connection had a cause. A failed component had a reason. You found the cause, you applied the fix, and it worked. The satisfaction of hearing a machine click back to life, of a red power light turning green. It was a feeling of control I never, ever felt inside the house. My hands, which the factory rented for minimum wage, were my own out here. I was not a resource. I was a creator. This was my one secret joy, my one act of defiance, and it was in that cold garage, under the humming light of a single bare bulb, that I started the ledger. It began not as a weapon, but as a necessity. It was a simple black and white composition book. At first, I just needed to know where the money was going. I had to track the parts I was buying for my secret projects. A capacitor here, a resistor there, against the money being drained by the house. So I started writing it all down. October 5th, $88. Electric bill. October 9th, $40. Vanessa's debate fee. October 12th, $120. Car insurance. October 19th, $4. 22-gauge wire. I wrote down every single transaction. Every time Mom said, "We need." Every time Vanessa said, "I need." Every time Dad silently handed me a past due notice. I stapled the receipts to the pages. The pharmacy bill for Dad's lungs. The emergency plumber's invoice. The property tax assessment. I didn't know what I was building. I just knew that in a house where my work was invisible, this book was my proof. It was the only place in the world where my contributions were written down, itemized, and accounted for. It was the first weapon I never knew I was forging. My name is Rachel Fox. I learned early that in Redridge, North Ashland, you are defined by one of two things: the dirt you inherited or the debt you collected. We had no dirt. Redridge isn't a town that builds things anymore. It's a town that rusts, a place where ambition comes to die, choked by the smell of the paper mill and the damp, gray fog that rolls off the hills. It clings to the county line like moss, forgotten by the state capital. My timeline, the one that matters, the one that ended with me holding a foreclosure notice that wasn't mine, starts when I was 19. It stretches across 2 decades, to the day I turned 38, 19 years. 19 years of my life evaporated inside the walls of 214 Oakmere Lane. 19 years of funding a fantasy that was never, ever mine. Our house had a specific scent, It wasn't baking bread or Sunday roasts. It was the smell of stale Folgers coffee, burnt hours ago, cold and acidic in the glass pot. That smell mixed with the sharp, almost metallic tang of the ink on the collection notices piled on the entryway table. They were always blue or pale red. Those envelopes, designed to look urgent, designed to panic. My father, Gordon, was home. Again, he'd lost his job at the lumberyard. The third time in 5 years. This time, he said, it was automation. The time before, it was his back. The time before that, his supervisor. There was always a reason. But the result was the same. He specialized in a kind of defeated, heavy silence. He occupied his faded recliner like a ghost, the springs groaning every time he shifted. The television was his companion, murmuring about stock markets and political victories and a world that had left him behind. My mother, Elaine, fought the entropy. She was a cleaner, working hourly for the new money families building mansions out past the old quarry. She'd come home smelling of industrial-strength lemon polish and bleach, the chemicals failing to mask the scent of pure exhaustion. She moved through our house with a tense, brittle energy, wiping counters that were already clean. Her lips a thin, white line of permanent calculation. The calculation was always about money, how much we needed, how much we didn't have, and, after I turned 19, who would pay? That who was never my sister. Vanessa. Vanessa was the jewel. She was the family's one remaining asset, the one thing they polished in the hopes of a high appraisal. She was 2 years younger, but she lived in a different atmosphere, breathing cleaner air. While I was learning the precise weight of our impending utility shutoff notices, she was practicing scales on the second-hand piano that took up half the living room. That piano. It appeared one Tuesday. I came home from school, and there it was, blocking the hallway. Mom said it was an investment in her future. I later found the receipt. I knew exactly which of my paychecks had paid the moving fee and the first installment. Vanessa's days were a whirlwind of performative success. Debate club practice, honor societies, and endless glowing talk of the partial scholarship she'd secured to the state university. She was bright. She was charming. And she was catastrophically expensive. She was also exempt. Vanessa was the future, the lawyer-to-be, the one who would get us all out of Redridge. I was just the infrastructure. I was the silent, buried cable that powered the spotlight shining on her. My contributions started the month after high school graduation. There was no discussion of college for me. It was assumed. While Vanessa debated hypotheticals under warm collegiate lights, I went to work at ArcLight Components, the night shift. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., I stood at Assembly Line 4. The entire factory was a massive, echoing concrete box, bathed in the buzzing, sickly green-white of failing fluorescent lights. That sound, that high-pitched electrical zzzt, became the soundtrack to my youth. It drilled into my skull, the noise of my life being traded for component parts. My job was to guide delicate motherboards under a magnified lens, soldering microscopic connections, pin 8 to capacitor 3, pin 9 to the resistor. Again and again, my hands, which were naturally steady and precise, became machines. I was good at it. My supervisor said I had the lowest defect rate on the line. I didn't know whether to be proud or horrified. I'd come home just as the pale gray dawn was breaking over the ridge. The smell of burnt flux and ozone, a sharp, metallic odor, would be ground into my skin and clinging to my hair. I'd walk through the front door, exhausted, just in time to see Vanessa leaving for her morning jogging class, smelling of fresh shampoo and opportunity. We'd pass in the hall. She'd give me a tight, pitying smile. I'd just nod, too tired to speak, and go to my small room to fall into a dead, dreamless sleep, the buzzing of the factory lights still echoing in my ears. I still remember the physical weight of that first full paycheck. It felt heavy, substantial, rectangular in its thin paper envelope. 76 hours, with time and a half for the weekend shift. I'd cashed it at the corner check cashing place. We didn't use banks. Banks asked questions and charged fees we couldn't afford. And I walked home, the wad of 20s and 10s a warm, proud lump in my jeans pocket. It was real. I had earned it. I was going to buy a real winter coat, one without a broken zipper. I was going to buy a bus pass. I was going to save for a basic electronics certification class at the community college. I found Mom at the kitchen table, the battlefield. She was surrounded by the familiar blue-windowed envelopes, a calculator by her elbow. She didn't look up when I came in, but her eyes fixed on the envelope in my hand. The mortgage is 3 weeks late, Rachel, and the light bill came. Final notice. I hesitated, my hand tightening on the money. I need a new coat for the walk to the bus stop. Mom. Coats can wait, she said. Her voice wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was flat, practical, absolute. We all have to contribute. This is house money. We're a family. And the family needs this. I pulled the money out. I watched her pull the bills from my envelope, her own fingers chapped and red from cleaning chemicals. She counted it, smoothing the bills flat on the table. She took all of it except for $40. For your gas and lunches, she said, a gesture of hollow generosity, as if she were granting me an allowance from my own labor. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just watched the line blur, the line between helping and being consumed, between contribution and sacrifice. It wasn't just blurred. It was erased in a single, silent transaction. That $40 didn't even cover half a tank for the week. The certification class evaporated. The coat would have to wait. My future was just paper, and she had just spent it on the past. That day set the pattern for the next 2 decades. It became the unspoken rule. My paycheck was no longer mine. It was the household's general fund, the emergency slush pile. And in our house, there was always an emergency. One February, when the temperature dropped to 5 degrees, the water heater burst. It was my paycheck, all of it, that paid the emergency plumber, the one who charged triple for a Saturday night call-out. When Vanessa needed 4 new, hardbound textbooks for her pre-law honors seminar, they're essential. Mom, I'll fail otherwise. He won't let us use the library copies. It was my accumulated overtime shifts that paid for them. I handed the cash directly to Vanessa, who took it without meeting my eyes. Thanks, she'd mumbled, already texting. I'll pay you back when I'm a big-shot lawyer. She never did. When Dad's cough turned into pneumonia, his COBRA insurance had lapsed. We didn't know until the emergency room admissions desk asked for a credit card, the copay, the antibiotics, the inhaler. It cost me almost $300. I paid it at the hospital pharmacy counter, the pharmacist looking at me with undisguised pity as I counted out the 20s. Electricity, water, the car insurance for the car everyone used but me, the property taxes. Twice a year, I was the silent partner in a failing corporation, the only one injecting capital. I was an ATM mounted in the hallway, and everyone knew the PIN. Dinner conversations were the worst. They were the daily shareholder meeting, forums dedicated entirely to Vanessa's future. Vanessa aced at her midterms, Dad would announce, stirring his instant mashed potatoes, a rare spark of pride in his eyes. Her professor says she has a real shot at a top-tier law school, Mom would add, beaming, pouring Vanessa the last of the milk. I'd sit there, my hands sore and stiff from the repetitive motion of the soldering iron, smelling the cafeteria food I'd microwaved for myself. I'd listen to them map out her glorious career, her corner office, her important cases, a future built entirely on the foundation of my night shifts. I wasn't a daughter, I was a utility. I was the plumbing, necessary, invisible, and only noticed when I failed to function. They consumed my money and my time, but I refused to let them consume my mind. My only escape, my only sanctuary, was the garage. It was cold, smelled of gasoline, old paint, and damp concrete, but it was mine, in the back corner, behind a dusty tarp and stacks of my father's old, bald tires. I had my workbench. It wasn't much. An old wooden desk I'd salvaged from a curb, a second-hand soldering station I'd bought for $10, one far better than the cheap ones at ArcLight, and a collection of tools I bought one piece at a time with scavenged dollars. This was where I found myself. I fixed things. It started with the neighbor's broken toaster. The spring was jammed. I took it apart, cleaned the mechanism, and it worked. Then our old vacuum cleaner, which just had a clogged belt. I found a box of discarded portable radios at the factory dump, and I spent an entire month taking them apart, cleaning the contacts, resoldering the bad connections, and aligning the tuners until every single one of them worked. The work was clean. It was logical. A broken connection had a cause. A failed component had a reason. You found the cause, you applied the fix, and it worked. The satisfaction of hearing a machine click back to life, of a red power light turning green. It was a feeling of control I never, ever felt inside the house. My hands, which the factory rented for minimum wage, were my own out here. I was not a resource. I was a creator. This was my one secret joy, my one act of defiance, and it was in that cold garage, under the humming light of a single bare bulb, that I started the ledger. It began not as a weapon, but as a necessity. It was a simple black and white composition book. At first, I just needed to know where the money was going. I had to track the parts I was buying for my secret projects, a capacitor here, a resistor there, against the money being drained by the house. So I started writing it all down. October 5th, $88. Electric bill. October 9th, $40. Vanessa's debate fee. October 12th, $120. Car insurance. October 19th, $4. 22-gauge wire. I wrote down every single transaction. Every time Mom said, "We need." Every time Vanessa said, "I need." Every time Dad silently handed me a past due notice. I stapled the receipts to the pages. The pharmacy bill for Dad's lungs, the emergency plumber's invoice, the property tax assessment. I didn't know what I was building. I just knew that in a house where my work was invisible, this book was my proof. It was the only place in the world where my contributions were written down, itemized, and accounted for. It was the first weapon I never knew I was forging. The event that changed everything wasn't a scream or a fight. It was a sound, a pressurized hiss from inside the wall, followed by a dull thump, and then the sudden, unmistakable roar of water falling where it shouldn't. I found my mother in the kitchen, staring up at the ceiling. A dark, bubbling stain was spreading rapidly across the drywall, a steady stream of water already pouring onto the linoleum. It was coming from our father's bathroom, directly above. "He tried to fix the showerhead himself," she whispered. Her voice was thin, vibrating with a rage she couldn't direct at him. Gordon was already back in his recliner, the volume on the television turned up to drown out the sound of his failure. This was my problem. Of course it was. I grabbed the phone book, my hands already wet from the water dripping off the counter. Voss Plumbing and Repair. They were the only ones listed for 24-hour service. I knew, even as I dialed, that this call would cost me a minimum of $200, the entirety of my savings from a side job I'd done. The van that pulled up an hour later was cleaner than I expected, not the usual rusted-out Redridge special. A man stepped out, maybe a few years older than me, with tired eyes and a calm set to his shoulders. "Noah Voss," he said, pulling a heavy toolbox from the back. He didn't huff or sigh at the mess. He just walked inside, laid down a tarp, a courtesy I'd never seen a repairman extend in our home, and went straight to the main water shutoff. He cut a neat, professional square out of the ceiling, assessed the damage, and then looked at me. "It's an old galvanized pipe, corroded straight through. I have to replace the joint, and I'll need to open the wall upstairs." He spoke quietly, with a simple finality. He wasn't trying to upsell me. He was just stating the facts. He worked for an hour, the sounds of sawing and the occasional clang of a wrench echoing through the house. Then he came downstairs. "I need to get to the main stack, and the cleanest access is through the garage. Is that all right?" My stomach dropped. The garage, my space. I'd forgotten to pull the tarp over my workbench. "Yeah, sure," I mumbled, following him out. He clicked on the overhead light, the single bare bulb humming to life. He stopped. He wasn't looking at the plumbing stack. He was looking at my corner. My tools were laid out. The radios I'd fixed were lined up on a shelf. My Hakko soldering station, the one decent piece of equipment I owned, was sitting next to a disassembled microwave. He walked over to it, not with judgment, but with curiosity. He picked up the circuit board from the microwave. "This is a clean weld," he said, his voice soft. He pointed to a tiny cluster of connections I had resoldered. "Really clean. You did this?" I just stared at him. It wasn't a compliment. It was a professional assessment. It was the first time in my life anyone had looked at my secret work and called it work. "Yeah," I said, my voice thick. I work the line at ArcLight Components, soldering boards." He nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "This is better than line work. This is diagnostic. You figured out the component failure." He set the board down gently. "You know, a skill like this can make money, real money. People pay a lot to fix things they don't want to replace." My mother appeared at the door, her arms crossed. "Is it fixed?" Noah turned, his entire demeanor shifting back to the customer. "Almost, ma'am. Just need to seal the joint." He walked past her, leaving me standing in the garage, the echo of his words, real money, hanging in the air. He finished the job. The total was $280. I paid him in cash from my envelope, the money I'd earned fixing that very microwave he'd been holding. As I signed the invoice, he paused. "Look, this is random, but I usually grab a burger at the Red Ridge Diner around 10:30, after my last call, if you're ever free." I looked at the clock. It was 8. The night shift at ArcLight didn't start until 11, but I had my other duties. "I can't," I said, the admission tasting like ash. "I have to be home. My father. He needs. I just have to be here. I usually can't leave after 10. He just looked at me. He didn't ask why. He didn't offer pity. He just saw. He saw the invisible chain. "What about before 10? We had burgers that night. At 8:30, I sat in the cracked vinyl booth, the smell of fries and old coffee thick in the air. I was tense, waiting for the usual questions about my family, my life, the questions that would force me to lie or expose the humiliating truth. He didn't ask. He asked what the hardest thing I'd ever fixed was. I told him about a 1950s tube radio I'd rebuilt. He told me about a 19th century boiler system he'd brought back to life. I found myself talking, really talking, for the first time in years, and I told him the part I hadn't been able to say in the garage. "He's not sick," I said, staring into my coffee. "My father, he's just given up, and my mom works early, so I have to be there, in case he needs something, or in case he wanders. It's just my job." Noah just nodded, slowly stirring his own coffee. "Sounds heavy." "It is." He paid for the burgers. When he dropped me off, it was $9.50. "You're good at what you do, Rachel," he said. "Don't let anyone, even them, make you think it's just a hobby." We started building a life in the margins, in stolen hours between my shifts and his calls. We met for coffee at dawn when I got off work. We organized his van on a Sunday afternoon. He taught me basic plumbing. I taught him advanced circuitry. He was the one who looked at my black ledger one night. He turned the pages slowly, his expression growing tighter. He saw the mortgage payments, the property taxes, Vanessa's tuition fees. "Rachel," he said, his voice quiet, "this isn't contribution. This is exploitation. You are paying for a house that isn't in your name." "It's family, Noah. It's complicated." "It's simple," he said. "They're drowning, and they're holding your head underwater to stay afloat." He was the one who gave me the idea. We can make our own money, money they can't touch, money for us. We printed business cards at the copy shop. Fox and Voss Repair. We fix what's broken. We tacked them on the bulletin boards at the laundromat and the diner. We opened a new bank account, a joint one. We called it the escape account. We funded it with $100 from a generator repair I'd done. 6 months after the pipe burst, we drove to the county courthouse and got married. It was a Tuesday. We stood under a massive tree in Pine Hollow Park, the only park in Red Ridge that still had green grass. Our witness was a woman walking her dog. My ring wasn't a diamond. It was a tiny, perfect brass gear that Noah had salvaged from an antique clock. "Because you're the part that makes everything else work," he said. I had never felt so seen. The announcement dinner was the opposite of the wedding. It was heavy, tense, and performed under the buzzing kitchen light. "Mom, Dad," I said, my hand so tight in Noah's that my knuckles were white. "Noah and I got married. Today, we're going to keep living here for a while, to save money, but we've also started our own repair business." My father's gaze didn't move from the television. My mother set her coffee mug down with a sharp clack. "Married? Without family? Without anything? What is wrong with you, Rachel?" "And a business?" she scoffed. "You have a job, a steady job with benefits." "It's not," I started, but was cut off. "Oh, hold on," Mom said, pulling her phone from her apron. "Vanessa's calling." She put it on speakerphone, a habit that always set my teeth on edge. "Nessa, honey, you'll never guess. Your sister just got married. To the plumber." Vanessa's voice, tinny and laced with amused contempt, filled the room. "Oh my God, seriously? Married the plumber? Wow, Rachel, that is the most Red Ridge thing you have ever done. Are you going to get free toilet repairs for life?" I felt the blood drain from my face, the old familiar shame creeping up my neck. I looked down. Then Noah spoke. His voice was calm, clear, and had an edge of steel I hadn't heard before. "My name is Noah, Vanessa, and yes, Rachel and I are partners. We're building a business together, and while we're here, we'll be contributing our share of the rent, but our professional time is our own." The word rent hung in the air, sharp and foreign. "Rent?" my mother hissed, narrowing her eyes at Noah. "This is her family's house. She doesn't pay rent." "She pays the mortgage," Noah said, his voice still quiet. "She pays the taxes. She pays the utilities. From now on, we'll call it what it is, rent." I tensed, waiting for the explosion, but my mother just gave Noah a look of pure, unadulterated contempt. She saw him for what he was, a threat to her system, an ally, my first ally. They allowed us to stay. It was their form of punishment. My garage, my sanctuary, was the first casualty. "We're cleaning out the garage, Rachel," Mom announced a week later. "Your father needs the space." "For what? His collection of empty paint cans?" "You and Noah can put your things in the back room." The back room was a converted porch off the kitchen. It was barely 8 feet by 10, with a single window that faced the neighbor's brick wall. It smelled like mildew and old carpet. They forced our entire operation, our workbench, my soldering station, Noah's pipe threaders, into that tiny, suffocating box. It was a physical manifestation of what they thought of our ambitions. But the real control, as always, was the money. When I tried to give my mother the $500 Noah and I had agreed on for rent, she wouldn't take it. "I don't understand this. Rachel," she said, her voice dripping with wounded martyrdom. "For 19 years, you've paid the mortgage. It comes right out of your account. Now this man moves in, and suddenly you're too good to support your family? Are you trying to make us homeless?" "No, Ma, Your father doesn't have an income. Your sister is in law school. She's our future. Rachel, are you going to take that away from her, just so you can play business with your husband?" The emotional checkmate was perfect. If I stopped paying, the bank would come. It would be my fault. I would be the one who put them on the street. So the arrangement continued. Only now it was worse. Noah and I worked from that tiny, cramped room, building Fox and Voss repair in the evenings, and my entire paycheck from ArcLight components continued to vanish, transferred automatically on the 1st and the 15th of every month. It went into the mortgage account, an account that bore the names Gordon and Elaine Fox. for a house that I was paying for but could never call my own. I didn't stop writing in the black ledger, I just got more detailed. I printed out the electronic transfer confirmations. I stapled the bank statements next to the property tax receipts I paid. I added a new column. Business income, Fox and Voss. The escape account was growing, dollar by dollar. The book was no longer a simple record of my expenses. It was a timeline. It was a paper trail. It was the proof of a 19-year-long crime, and I was the only one who knew it. The end began, as it always did, with a call from Vanessa. I was in the tiny back room, our office, trying to diagnose a faulty power supply for a local diner's cash register. Noah was across from me, cataloging pipe fittings. The room was so small our knees almost touched. My phone buzzed on the workbench, Vanessa's name flashing on the screen. I wiped my hands on a rag and answered, putting her on speaker. Hey, Nessa, what's up? Rachel, hi. Her voice was bright, airy, and utterly dismissive. So, great news. I'm moving back home. My lease is up. And honestly, the city is just draining my energy. I need a place to reset and, reinvent. I looked at Noah. His hands stopped moving. Reinvent? I asked, my throat already tightening. What happened to the law firm? Oh, that was just toxic. A totally predatory environment. I'm pivoting. I'm going to be a wellness consultant. I'm getting my yoga certification online. Noah and I shared a look of pure, unadulterated disbelief. Wellness consultant? Of course. Okay, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice even. So, you'll be in your old room, then. Well, that's the thing, she laughed, a sound like tiny sharp bells. My room gets zero good light, and I need a dedicated space for my practice, for filming my videos, My clients will expect a professional backdrop. I knew what was coming. I could feel the cold dread crawl up my spine. So, she continued, I'll be taking that little back room off the kitchen, the one with the good window. I closed my eyes, the good window that faced a solid brick wall 6 feet away. Vanessa, you can't. That's our office. That's Fox and Voss. That's our business. Rachel, don't be dramatic, she sighed, the patience in her voice manufactured and thin. It's a storage room you and the plumber are camping in. I need it for my actual career. You can just put your tools back in the garage, right? There is no space in the garage, Vanessa. Dad filled it with stuff. This is the only space we have. We have clients. We have inventory. Then figure it out. I'm not going to stunt my personal growth just because you two are playing house. I'll be there Saturday. The movers are booked for 10 a.m. She hung up before I could say another word. I stood there, the phone heavy in my hand. The silence in the tiny room was suffocating. She's taking our office, I whispered to Noah. He just nodded slowly, his jaw tight. We need to talk to your mother. We talked to my mother. It was a disaster. We found her in the kitchen, clipping coupons. I laid out the situation. Logically, calmly, I explained that it was our only workspace, that it was how we were earning our side income, the income for our future. She didn't even look up from the supermarket flyers. Rachel, you are being incredibly selfish. My breath hitched. Selfish? Mom, I pay for this entire house. We are asking for one small 8 by 10-foot room. Your sister is in a fragile place, she said, her scissors snipping cleanly through a 2-for-1 soup deal. She's had a very difficult time. She needs a place to heal, to reinvent herself. She said the word reinvent as if it were a holy sacrament. And where are we supposed to work? Noah asked, his voice respectful but firm. Where does our business go? My mother finally looked up, her eyes landing on him, cold and hard. You have a job at the factory, Rachel. That's your job. This thing you do on the side is a hobby. Vanessa's career is important. She's building a brand. Now, I don't want to hear another word about it. She needs that room. She's getting that room. Family comes first. We are family, Noah said quietly. Vanessa needs us, she corrected. And that's final. Saturday came. I didn't sleep Friday night. I just sat on the edge of our bed in the dark. The factories buzzing in my ears, even though I was home. I felt the vibration of the coming collision. At 9:58 a.m., the moving truck, a big bright yellow U-Haul, rumbled down Oakmere Lane and hissed to a stop at the curb. I watched from the living room window. Vanessa stepped out of the passenger side, not the driver's. Some guy I didn't recognize was driving. She was wearing oversized black sunglasses, a flowing white linen dress, and sandals. In October, she looked like she was arriving at a resort, not her childhood home in defeat. She never looked at the house. She just pointed. 2 movers in blue shirts hopped out of the back. My mother unlocked the front door and held it open, beaming. Nessa, you're here. Let's get you settled. Hi, Mom. Vanessa's voice drifted in. Let's just get this done. The studio space is the priority. She walked right past me, her sunglasses still on inside the house, and led the movers toward the kitchen. It's back here, the small room. I met them at the doorway. I stood right in the frame. The 2 movers stopped, holding a large, rolled-up yoga mat and a white desk. Rachel, move, Vanessa snapped, her voice losing its airy quality. No, I said. My voice was trembling, but I held my ground. This is our office. Vanessa, you can't just take it. I just did, she said, gesturing to the movers. Go on, guys. Push past her. She'll move. The movers looked at me, then at Vanessa, their faces blank with the practiced neutrality of men paid not to get involved. Mom, Vanessa yelled. My mother appeared, her face a thundercloud. Rachel Fox, what do you think you are doing? Get out of that doorway and let your sister in. Mom, this is not fair. This is our livelihood. It's all we have. My mother stepped up to me, her face inches from mine. I could smell the faint, acidic coffee on her breath. She spoke in a low, furious hiss, a voice she saved just for me. The voice of final judgment. You are a guest in this house. Rachel, this house belongs to your father and me. Vanessa is our daughter, and she needs this room. If you don't like it, she said, her eyes pinning me. You and your husband can move out. The words hung in the air. The living room went utterly silent. The buzz of the refrigerator, the sound of the movers shuffling their feet on the linoleum, the distant murmur of the television. Move out. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an execution. It was the final, brutal calculation. I was the utility, and I had just been declared obsolete, replaceable by the fragile daughter who had returned. My 19 years of payments, the mortgage, the taxes, the burst pipes, the broken heaters, all of it erased in one sentence. I felt something inside me, a tightly wound spring I'd been holding in my chest for 20 years, finally snap. My hands stopped shaking. My throat, which had been dry and tight, suddenly cleared. Then I felt a hand on my back, a warm, solid, steady pressure. It was Noah. He had been standing behind me the whole time, silent. Then we'll go, he said. His voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was a statement of fact, as simple and final as diagnosing a broken pipe. I turned my head and looked at him. He met my gaze. His eyes said, "We are done here. It's over." I stepped out of the doorway. My mother actually scoffed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Oh, stop it. Rachel, don't be so dramatic. You're not going anywhere. You're just trying to make Vanessa feel guilty." Vanessa, her sunglasses now pushed up on her head, just rolled her eyes. "Whatever. Just get your junk out of my studio. I need to set up my ring light." I didn't say a word. I walked past Noah, into our cramped office. I looked at the workbench, the tools, the inventory. "Just the essentials," Noah said from the doorway. I nodded. I unplugged my soldering station. I packed it carefully into its original box. I gathered my precision screwdrivers, my wire strippers, my multimeter. I put them, one by one, into my metal toolbox. I went to the closet and pulled out the small fireproof safe. I opened it and took out the black and white composition book. My ledger. I tucked it under my arm. Noah was already packing his own tools, pipe wrenches, threaders, cutters. We moved with a silent, efficient synchronicity. I went to our bedroom. I pulled my duffel bag from under the bed. I packed 3 changes of work clothes, my ArcLight uniform, my jeans, my steel-toed boots. I left the high school photos on the dresser. I left the stuffed animal I'd had since I was 5. I left the framed picture of my graduation. I left everything that tied me to Rachel Fox, the daughter. We carried 4 boxes and our 2 tool chests into the living room. My mother and Vanessa were directing the movers, laughing about where to put a new, white floor lamp. They stopped and stared as we walked toward the front door. My mother's smile faded. "What is this? What are you doing?" "We're moving out," I said. My voice was perfectly calm. "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "Your shift at the factory starts at 11. Stop this nonsense and help your sister." "I'm not going to the factory tonight," I said. "I'm quitting. We're leaving. Mom, like you said." Her face went pale. The bluff had been called. You can't just... The mortgage. Rachel, the mortgage payment is due on the 1st. "That sounds like your problem now," I said. I saw my father. He was in his recliner. As always. He was watching us, his eyes following our movements, but they were vacant. There was no sadness, no anger, no confusion. He was just empty, a vessel. And I understood, in that final, terrible moment, that the emotional war had been lost decades ago. I had been fighting to win the approval of a ghost. I had been sacrificing my life for a man who was already gone. Noah held the front door open for me. I walked out onto the porch. He followed, pulling the door shut behind us with a solid, definitive click. We loaded our boxes into his van. I got in the passenger seat. He started the engine. I did not look back. I did not look at the peeling paint on the window trim I had always meant to fix. I did not look at the overgrown rose bushes I had paid for. I did not look at 214 Oakmere Lane as we pulled away from the curb and drove toward the highway. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. Then Noah pulled into a gas station. He didn't get gas. He just put the van in park and looked at me. "Are you okay?" he asked. A sound tore out of my throat. It wasn't a sob. It was a laugh, sharp and brittle. It turned into a sob, and then back into a laugh. I was crying and laughing at the same time, my hands covering my face. It was the sound of a pressure valve releasing 20 years of steam. I gasped, wiping my face. I'm free." He pulled out his phone. "I saw a sign last week. Townhouses for rent. East Briar. It's 20 minutes from here." He made the call. A sleepy landlord answered. "Yeah, number 4B is open. 2-bedroom. First and last month's rent. You can have it tonight if you've got the cash." "We've got it," Noah said. Looking at me, I nodded. The escape account. "Keys in the lockbox by the door," the landlord grunted. "Code is 9211. We drove to East Briar, a newer, cleaner neighborhood I'd only ever passed through. We found number 4B. Noah punched in the code. The lockbox clicked open. He handed me the key. I opened our own front door. We stepped inside. It was empty, completely empty. The walls were beige. The carpet was new. And the whole place smelled overwhelmingly of cheap, fresh paint. It was the most beautiful smell in the world. We dropped our toolboxes on the carpet. We had no furniture, no food, no plan. Noah left and came back 20 minutes later with a bag from a convenience store. 2 cups of instant noodles and 2 plastic forks. We sat on the floor in our empty living room, the moonlight streaming through the clean, empty sliding glass door. We poured hot tap water into the styrofoam cups and waited. We ate our noodles in silence, and for the first time in my entire adult life, I wasn't listening for a TV in the other room. I wasn't waiting for a call for help. I wasn't calculating someone else's bills in my head. I was just Rachel Fox, and I was home. We were never, ever going back. The first morning in the townhouse was jarring. I woke up on the floor. my back aching, to the smell of fresh paint and the sound of nothing. No television murmuring through the walls, no creaking floorboards overhead, no distant, hacking cough. The silence was absolute, so loud it felt like a presence. Noah was already up, sitting cross-legged on the carpet in the living room, our black ledger open on the floor in front of him. He was scribbling on a yellow legal pad. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice gravelly. "Math," he said, not looking up. "I'm running the numbers. Our rent here is $1,200 a month. Utilities will be about $200. We have $8,650 in the escape account. We need to get jobs, Noah, fast." "I have jobs," he said, tapping his own ledger. "My plumbing calls are steady, not rich, but steady. The problem isn't me, Rachel, it's ArcLight." "What are you talking about? It's my only steady paycheck. It's the only thing I have left." He finally looked up, his eyes clear and serious. "It's also in Redridge. It's a 40-minute drive from here. Each way. That's over an hour and a half of driving, 5 days a week. At current gas prices, that's almost $70 a week, just in your tank. That's $280 a month, just to get to a job that pays you barely enough." He tapped the legal pad. "But it's not the money. It's the anchor. It's the last chain. You're still tied to Redridge. You're still on their turf. You'll drive past the old street. You'll go to the same gas station. You'll see people you know. They'll ask questions. We left. Rachel, let's leave." "Quit?" The word felt like swallowing glass. "Quit my job? With no... What about the benefits? The insurance?" "We'll get our own. We'll build this." He pointed to the corner where our toolboxes sat, stacked like monuments. "Fox and Voss, we have $8,000. That's our runway. Let's see if we can fly. Let's give it 3 months, 90 days, all our time, all our energy. Right here in East Briar. If we can't make rent in 90 days, you can go back to ArcLight. But let's try." My hand went to the phone. I thought about the buzzing factory, the smell of burnt flux, the green-white lights. I thought about my supervisor, the automatic paycheck transfers. It was the only security I had ever known. And then I thought of my mother's face. "If you don't like it, you can move out." I picked up the phone. I called the factory HR line. I left a message on their machine. "My name is Rachel Fox. I'm resigning. Effective immediately. Don't mail my last check. I'll come pick it up." When I hung up, I was shaking. I had just voluntarily cut the last thread. We were in free fall. "Good," Noah said, smiling. "Now, let's get to work." We weren't just Fox and Voss repair anymore. My focus was electronics. His was plumbing. But we needed a name that covered my half. The second bedroom was our headquarters. It was larger than our old room, and the single window looked out over a small, grassy courtyard. It was bright. We bought a 6-foot folding table from a hardware store and set it up against the wall. My soldering station went in the middle. The command center. Noah took a piece of cardboard from one of our moving boxes and a black marker. In neat, strong letters, he wrote, "Fox Fix Lab." He taped it to the bedroom door. It was temporary. It was cheap. And it was the most beautiful sign I had ever seen. The next day, we spent $40 at the copy shop, printing 500 flyers. "Fox and Voss Repair," the headline read. "Plumbing and electronics. If it's broken, we can fix it. Fast, fair, local." We put our new business-only cell phone number at the bottom. We spent the entire day walking. We walked through East Briar, a neighborhood that was completely foreign to me. It had bakeries and bookstores and coffee shops that weren't just gas stations. We tacked our flyers on every community bulletin board we could find: the laundromat, the supermarket, the post office. For 3 days, the new phone was silent. We organized the lab. We created an inventory system. We bought a cheap folding card table and 2 chairs for the kitchen. We ate rice and beans and counted our runway. $8,000. It felt like a fortune, and it felt like nothing. On the 4th morning, the phone rang. The sound was so sudden, I nearly dropped my coffee. Noah grabbed it. "Fox and Voss, this is Noah." He listened, his expression serious. Yeah, yes, I understand. My partner is the electronics specialist. We can be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. That was a coffee shop. The Bean Anchor. Over on Main. The owner says her cash register system just died. Completely dead. It's her morning rush. And she's frantic. We were in the van in 2 minutes. The Bean Anchor was chaos. A line of customers stretched out the door, most of them looking annoyed. A woman with dark, curly hair tied back in a bandana was standing behind the counter, trying to use an old-fashioned calculator. "I'm sorry, it's cash only right now," she was yelling, her voice cracking with stress. She saw us walk in, toolboxes in hand. "Fox and Voss?" she pleaded. "I'm Rachel," I said. "Where is it?" She pointed to the main point-of-sale terminal. The screen was black. "It just popped," she said. "There was a little popping sound, and then it went dead. And my credit card reader is networked through it. I'm dead in the water, and it's Saturday. The company that services this won't be out until Monday, and they charge a $400 emergency fee." "Let's see," I said. I unplugged the main unit. I moved it to the back counter. Noah stood guard, quietly explaining to customers that we were working on it. I opened the casing. The smell hit me immediately. Burnt electronics. Ozone. I saw the problem in 10 seconds. A cluster of capacitors on the internal power supply board was fried. They were bubbled and leaking. "Here's your problem," I told the owner. "Maria, power supply is shot. Can you fix it? Oh God, please tell me you can fix it." "I can't replace this board today," I said. "But," I traced the wires. The main terminal was just a computer. "The data cable is fine. It just needs power. And," I checked the input voltage. "It's just a standard 12-volt system, but there's a loose wire on the data port, too. That's probably what caused the surge." I clipped the fried power supply wires. I pulled a universal AC-DC adapter from my kit, one of the heavy-duty ones I used for testing. I set the voltage to 12. I spliced the wires, insulating them with heat shrink tubing. I resecured the loose data cable with a zip tie and a dab of hot glue to brace it. "Okay," I said. "Plug it in." Maria plugged it in. The machine chimed. The screen flickered to life, booting up to the main menu. "Oh my God," she whispered. She ran a test credit card. It beeped. Approved. She turned to me, her eyes full of tears. You fixed it. You saved my Saturday." "It's a temporary fix," I said, packing my tools. "You'll need a new unit eventually, but this will hold you."
"How much do I owe you?"
"Our emergency call-out is 1 hour minimum," Noah said. "That'll be $75. She didn't even blink. She pulled a wad of cash from the register. She counted out $150 and pushed it into my hand. "Double," she said. "You saved me more than that in the first 10 minutes. Coffee is on the house, for life." That was the first domino. Maria became our biggest advocate. She told the owner of the bookstore next door, who hired us to fix his ancient, rattling cash register. He told the director of the local daycare, who hired us to fix the security camera in her office that pointed at the parking lot. She was impressed by our speed and professionalism, that we didn't try to upsell her, that we just fixed the bad connector and left. The work started to trickle in. A plumbing call for Noah, an audio amplifier repair for me, another coffee shop's espresso machine that had a bad control board. The phone was ringing once or twice a day. That night, after the Bean Anchor fix, Noah and I sat at our folding card table. We had takeout pizza, a celebration. We opened the laptop and logged into the bank account. We deposited the $150. Escape account. Noah read. He looked at me. "We're not escaping anymore, are we?" "No," I said. "We're not." He clicked Edit Account Name. He typed in a new name, Origin. "This is where we start," he said. We paid our first month's rent, $1,200. We paid it with money we had earned together, from Fox Fix Lab and Voss Repair, money that had never passed through my mother's hands, money that had never been explained away as house money or family duty, It was our own. The feeling was indescribable. The silence from Redridge was deafening. 2 weeks passed, then 3, not a single call. Part of me was relieved, but another, smaller, older part of me was terrified. The guilt was a low-grade fever, always there. I found myself holding my personal phone one night, staring at Mom in my contacts. What if Dad had fallen? What if she was sick? What if they were sitting in the dark because they didn't know how to pay the light bill? Noah saw me. He put his hand over mine. "Don't," he said gently. "It's been almost a month. Noah, I should at least check." "Rachel, if your father fell, you'd know. If the power was off, she would have found a way to call you. She's not calling because she's waiting for you to break. She's waiting for you to crawl back and apologize, so she can take the mortgage payment and pretend nothing happened. Don't." I put the phone down. He was right. It was a strategic silence, a war of attrition. I chose to match it. If it was a true emergency, they would call. Until then, I had to protect our new life. The first month turned into 2, then 3. Our cash flow stabilized. We had a spreadsheet. We had regular clients. We paid our bills on time. And one afternoon, we took $600 from the Origin account, went to a mattress store, and bought a real, brand-new queen-sized mattress. That night, lying on it, I almost cried. It was the first new bed I had ever slept in. "We can do this," I whispered to Noah in the dark. "We can really do this. Maybe next year we could even look for a small storefront." "Absolutely," he said, his voice sleepy. "Fox and Voss Repair, Co. Sounds good." I was happy, truly, deeply happy, for the first time in my adult life. And that, of course, was when the phone rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the lab, recalibrating a coffee grinder. My personal phone, the one I kept charged in a drawer, started to ring. I froze. The caller ID was home. My heart hammered. The old, cold panic. This is it. The emergency. Dad. I stared at it. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. Home. I let it ring. Voicemail. A third time, a fourth. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my screwdriver. "Just answer it, Rach," Noah said from the doorway. "Get it over with." The 5th time it rang, I snatched it up. My voice was a choked whisper. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then, "Rachel? God, finally. I've been calling for 10 minutes. Took you long enough." It wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was Vanessa, and she sounded annoyed. "Vanessa?" I said, confused. "What's wrong? Is Dad okay? Is there an emergency?" "An emergency? I don't know. Maybe," she snapped, her voice sharp and brittle. "I just got this letter, this official-looking envelope from some bank. It's a mortgage statement. What is a mortgage statement? And why in God's name did I just get one?" I stood up. The room, which had been spinning, suddenly came into sharp, perfect focus. The fear, the guilt, the 20 years of fog, all of it evaporated in an instant, replaced by a feeling of cold, hard, beautiful clarity. I walked to the window and looked out at the bright, clean courtyard of our new life. "That, Vanessa," I said, and my voice was perfectly steady, "is the bill for the house, the one I've been paying for 20 years, and I'm not paying it anymore." I hung up. The silence from Redridge lasted exactly 48 hours after I hung up on Vanessa. Then, the war began. It didn't start with a phone call. It started with the mail. It was a certified letter. The green and white slip in our new mailbox made my stomach clench. I had to sign for it. The return address wasn't 214 Oakmere Lane. It was Venable Stone and Associates, a law firm. I sat at our folding card table, the thick, creamy envelope feeling heavy in my hands. Noah stood opposite me, wiping his hands on a rag. "Go on," he said. "It's just paper." I opened it. The language was dense, suffocating. It was a formal letter of demand. It accused me of unethical and immoral cessation of established familial support. It claimed my abrupt and malicious departure constituted a willful endangerment of vulnerable adults, namely Gordon and Elaine Fox. It stated that I had, for 2 decades, established a clear and binding pattern of financial obligation which I had abandoned, causing my parents extreme emotional distress and financial peril. My hands were shaking. They're calling me a criminal for leaving. Keep reading, Noah said, his voice grim. The second page was the demand. It wasn't just for the mortgage. They were demanding I immediately reinstate all previous financial support, retroactive to the day I left. They were demanding I pay a lump sum of $50,000 for the emotional trauma I had inflicted.
And then, the kill shot.
They demanded a 50% stake in Fox and Voss Repair. I read that line 3 times, the words blurring. What? Why? How? The letter explained, "Our clients," it read, "provided shelter, utilities, and foundational resources, including electricity and internet access, during the entire incubation period of your nascent business. As such, they are entitled to a significant share of all past, present, and future revenue derived from the enterprise conceived under their roof." They weren't just trying to get the house paid for, they were trying to steal my new life. They were trying to own my future. They're not just drowning anymore, I whispered, the paper rattling in my grip. They're trying to pull us under with them. Noah took the letter. He read it once, his face hardening. He walked to the laptop, opened our Origin account, and looked at the balance. We had, through relentless work, built it back up to just over $10,000. We had been saving it for a proper work van, one with our logo on the side.
That, he said, pointing to the screen, is the truck money, and we're not buying a truck with it.
We found Daniel Price in a strip mall in East Briar, wedged between a bright pink nail salon and a Liberty tax office. His sign was just white vinyl lettering on the glass door. Daniel Price, SQ, attorney at law. His office was small, cluttered with boxes of files, and smelled like burnt coffee and old paper. Daniel himself was in his 40s, with a slightly wrinkled shirt and kind, tired eyes. He didn't look like a killer. He looked like a man who understood bills. We sat in the 2 plastic chairs opposite his desk. I tried to explain, my voice trembling, the last 20 years rushing out of me in a jumbled, panicked flood. The factory, the checks, the mortgage, the ledger, Vanessa, the studio, the letter. I felt insane. I felt like I was describing a hostage situation that I had volunteered for. Daniel just listened. He steepled his fingers, nodding occasionally. He didn't interrupt me once. When I finally finished, out of breath, he just said, "May I see the letter?" I gave it to him. He read it. A small, dry smile touched his lips. Willful endangerment of vulnerable adults. That's a new one. They're creative. I'll give them that. Is this real? I asked. Can they do this? They can try, Daniel said. In North Ashland, there is no law compelling an adult child to financially support their parents, especially when those parents are able-bodied and one has demonstrably abandoned the workforce. This letter, he tapped it, is designed to do one thing, terrify you. It's an emotional argument dressed up in legal paper. But the business, they said I used their electricity. Did you have a contract? Did you sign a lease? Did they ever, in writing, state that your contributions were conditional on future earnings? No, I said. They just took the money, and then they kicked us out.
Okay, he leaned back. So, you paid their bills for 2 decades. You have proof of this?
My moment of clarity returned, the cold, hard anger. Yes, I said. I opened my bag and took out the fireproof safe. I put it on his desk. I opened it and pulled out the black and white composition book. I placed it in front of him. I kept records, I said. Daniel opened the ledger. He was silent for a full minute. He turned the first few pages, seeing the entries from 19 years ago. Then he flipped to the more recent sections. He saw the stapled pharmacy receipts, the printed-out transfer confirmations, the notations for Vanessa's tuition, and Dad's insurance. He closed the book slowly. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the lawyer. "This," he said, his voice flat, "is not a family dispute. This is a transaction history. You weren't a daughter, Rachel. You were an unsecured lender. You have 2 decades of receipts proving that you provided far more value than you ever consumed. Their claim is garbage, and it's provably false. We have a timeline." "There's more," Noah said. I looked at him, confused. "A week after we left," Noah said to Daniel. My phone rang. It was Vanessa. She didn't call Rachel. She called me. I was in the van, and my phone auto-connected to the Bluetooth, the van's system. It records all calls to the hard drive. Just a weird quirk. I never deleted it. Daniel sat up. "What did she say?" "She was furious. She said Rachel was being dramatic and ruining everything. She told me, and I'm pretty sure I remember the exact words, 'You tell her to stop this stupid phase and keep paying the bills. She can pay it like rent. Otherwise, Mom and Dad are going to lose the house, and it'll be her fault.'" Daniel's smile was not kind. "Get me that file. Get it today. An audio recording of the opposing party demanding continued payment as rent. That, right there, torpedoes their entire claim that you were a guest." We paid him his retainer. It was $4,000, almost half the truck fund. It was the most terrifying and relieving check I had ever written. Daniel's response to Venable and Stone was dry, professional, and brutal. He rejected all their claims. He included a copy of the first mortgage payment I ever made, and the last. He stated that we considered the matter closed. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, a new summons. They weren't just demanding money. They were officially suing us, and they had added a new claim: intellectual property theft. I sat in Daniel's office again, the new papers in my hand. "I don't understand. What intellectual property?" "Vanessa's," Daniel said, reading his own copy. "They are claiming that your sister, Vanessa Fox, in her capacity as a business and lifestyle consultant, provided the foundational intellectual concept for Fox and Voss Repair. They claim she conceived of the enterprise as a way to channel your skills, and that you stole her proprietary business model when you left." I just stared at him. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it. The lie was so vast, so complete. It was almost impressive. She was trying to steal my work, my skill, the one thing that was mine. "She's lying," I whispered. "I know," Daniel said. "And she knows, but she's betting you can't prove it. She's betting you'll settle. She's betting you'll be too scared of a courtroom to fight back." "I'm terrified," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm terrified of losing everything. We're just starting. A lawsuit. It could ruin us." "It could," Daniel agreed, his gaze steady. "Or we could ruin them. We are not going to argue with them. Rachel, we are just going to show the math. I want every single invoice you and Noah have ever sent, every receipt for every capacitor, resistor, and pipe fitting, every flyer you tack to a bulletin board. I want signed and notarized affidavits from your clients: Maria at the Bean Anchor, the bookstore owner, the daycare." He leaned forward. "Vanessa is claiming she invented your business. We are going to bury her in a mountain of paper that proves you were doing your business, long before she ever thought to steal it." He looked at me. "I'm scared, Daniel, but I'm angry. I've never been this angry." "Good," he said. "Hold on to that. It's clearer than fear." The hearing was set for 6 weeks out. Those 6 weeks were the hardest of our lives. We were hemorrhaging money to Daniel's office for filings and depositions, and we had to make our rent. We worked from 6 in the morning until midnight. I was on my feet, driving all over East Briar, fixing anything with a wire. I repaired shorted-out guitar amplifiers, broken coffee grinders, malfunctioning security keypads. Noah was under sinks and in crawl spaces, taking every plumbing call, no matter how small. We were exhausted. We ate standing up in the kitchen, passing each other like ships in the night. Our entire world reduced to the Origin bank account and the growing pile of evidence on Daniel's desk. One night, Daniel called. "Just compiling the financials," he said. "I have all the mortgage statements you paid. What about the property taxes?" "I paid them," I said, rubbing my tired eyes. "Every year, 19 years. "I need the proof," he said. "All of it. I want to show a complete picture." I logged into the Bryan County Tax Assessor's website. I pulled the payment history for 214 Oakmere Lane, and there it was, a 19-year history of payments, all originating from my bank account. I printed every single page. This was the Chekhov's gun. This was the smoking gun. This was the proof that I hadn't just paid the mortgage, I had paid for the land. While this legal storm was raging, Vanessa was active on social media. She posted a photo of herself, in a perfect warrior pose, in the middle of our old office. My workbench was gone, replaced by a white shag rug and orchids. The good window was behind her. The caption was nauseating. "Finding my light," she wrote. "So excited to be building my new wellness brand from this sacred space. Sometimes you have to tear down the old to build something beautiful and new. Reinvention Boss Babe Wellness Consultant, New Beginnings." She was using my sacrifice, the very room she had stolen from me, as her marketing backdrop. Then, about 10 days before our court date, her feed went dark. No new posts, no stories about her reinvention, just silence. It was an unnatural, sudden quiet. It was the silence of someone who has just received a letter from an actual lawyer. It was the sound of a different kind of debt collector finally knocking on her own door. The Bryan County Courthouse, preliminary hearings, courtroom 3B, was not a grand hall of justice. It was a small, beige room that smelled like floor wax and anxiety. The acoustics were terrible. Every cough echoed. We sat at a table to the right. Noah beside me. I wore the only nice blazer I owned. Noah wore a tie. We looked like what we were, terrified small business owners. At the table to the left sat my mother, Elaine, and my sister, Vanessa. They were dressed in dark, modest clothing, as if attending a funeral. Their lawyer, a slick man from Venable, Stone and Associates, sat between them, his briefcase gleaming. My father was not there. Not well enough to attend, their lawyer had claimed. The room was almost empty, a few other cases waiting their turn. This wasn't a media spectacle. It was just another Tuesday of county business. "Case number 704, Fox and Voss," the bailiff called out. Judge Hartley, a woman with a sharp face and a neat helmet of silver hair, looked down at us over her glasses. "Mr. Venable, you're the plaintiff. Begin." Venable stood. He was a performer. He spoke in a smooth, mournful voice, painting a picture of an idyllic family shattered by betrayal. He pointed at me, not by name, but with a subtle, damning gesture. "We have a daughter," he said, "who, after benefiting from the love, support, and shelter of her parents for her entire life, including the incubation of her new business, decided to abandon them. She ceased, overnight, a 20-year pattern of support." He paced. "She did this not out of necessity, but out of malice. She manipulated her elderly, infirm father and her hard-working mother into a state of financial dependency, and then, like a predator, pulled the rug out from under them. She left them destitute, facing homelessness, for no reason other than greed." I felt the blood drain from my face. Predator? "And worse, Your Honor," Venable continued, his voice dropping. "She stole the very business concept her brilliant, innovative sister, Ms. Vanessa Fox, had developed." On cue, Vanessa brought a tissue to her eyes. My mother, Elaine, reached over and squeezed her hand, her own shoulders trembling with staged sorrow. A few people in the back of the courtroom murmured, "Shame." I was sinking. They were painting me as a monster, and they were good at it. I looked at Daniel. He was just watching, motionless, like a heron waiting for a fish. "Mr. Price?" Judge Hartley said, her voice dry. Daniel stood up. He didn't pace. He didn't raise his voice. He walked to the center of the room with a small digital audio recorder. Your Honor, the plaintiffs claim my client, Rachel Fox, abandoned a familial duty. They paint her as a guest who refused to pay her share. I'd like to play a piece of evidence. This is a recording of a phone call from the plaintiff, Vanessa Fox, to my client's husband, Noah Voss, 1 week after my clients were forced to leave the residence. Venable shot to his feet. Objection. Relevance? This is a family matter. It's a financial matter, Mr. Venable, as your lawsuit claims, Daniel said. It speaks directly to the nature of the arrangement.
I'll allow it, Hartley said, leaning forward.
Daniel pressed play. The courtroom, which had been filled with Venable's smooth voice, was suddenly filled with Vanessa's, tinny, sharp, and furious. Tell her to stop this stupid phase and keep paying the bills. She can pay it like rent, like she's always done. I don't care what she and the plumber are doing. That's her responsibility. If Mom and Dad lose the house, it's her fault. And I'll tell everyone it's her fault, so just tell her to pay it. Otherwise, she can just cancel her stupid clients. The audio clicked off. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Vanessa's face was chalk white. The woman who had been dabbing her eyes was gone, replaced by a pale mask of fury. My mother was staring, open-mouthed, at her own lawyer. Pay it like rent, Daniel repeated, his voice quiet. That was the plaintiff's term. This wasn't a cessation of support, Your Honor. It was a tenant moving out, a tenant who, as it happens, was also paying all the bills for the landlords. He turned to the large monitor on the wall. Which brings me to the financial claims. The first slide lit up. It was a title. Mortgage payments, 214 Oakmere Lane, 19-year period. Objection, Venable said, weaker this time. Financial records. This is invasive. You're suing for $50,000 and 50% of a business, Judge Hartley snapped. You made this a financial record. Sit down. Mr. Venable. The next slide was a bank statement, a transfer, from Rachel Fox checking to Briar County Mutual Mortgage, dated 19 years ago. And the next, Daniel said, another and another, a cascade of payments, month after month, year after year. My client, Rachel Fox, Daniel said, his voice a calm narrator, has paid 100% of the mortgage on her parents' home since she was 19 years old. A total of 228 consecutive payments. She was not sheltered, she was the shelter. He clicked again. Property taxes, Briar County, last 19 years, all paid by Rachel Fox. Click. Utilities, water, electric, gas, all paid, or partially paid, by Rachel Fox. Click. Repairs, water heater, plumbing, all paid by Rachel Fox. My mother was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Now, Daniel said, we come to the claim of intellectual property theft. The plaintiffs allege that Vanessa Fox, a wellness consultant, conceived of a specialized electronics and plumbing repair business, a business, I might add, that my client has been training for her entire adult life. He put up a new slide. It was a photo of me, years ago, in the garage at my old workbench, my soldering iron in hand, a mess of wires in front of me. This is Rachel Fox, 5 years ago. This is her workbench. Click, a new photo, a stack of invoices. Fox Fix Lab. These are her invoices, from Client 1, Maria at the Bean Anchor, an emergency POS system repair. Click. This is an affidavit from Ms. Maria, stating that Rachel Fox's work was fast, professional, and saved her business. This is an affidavit from the owner of the bookstore. This is an affidavit from the daycare director, including a copy of my client's electrical safety certification, which she earned 3 years ago. Click. This, Daniel said, is a detailed, itemized list of every piece of equipment, every capacitor, every wire, and every pipe fitting Fox & Voss Repair has purchased since its inception. This is a stack of receipts for work. The plaintiffs have provided a social media post about good light and reinvention. He turned the monitor off. The room was silent. Daniel walked back to our table. He looked at Judge Hartley. My clients have been slandered, they have been harassed, they have been extorted, and they are here, asking the court to dismiss this frivolous, malicious lawsuit in its entirety and to award legal fees. Judge Hartley looked at Venable. Her face was granite. "Mr. Venable," she said, her voice cutting through the room, "is there any, and I mean any, written contract between these parties? Is there a lease, an employment agreement, a promissory note?" Venable stood, shuffling his papers. "Your Honor, no. But in cases of family—" "I am not asking about family, Mr. Venable. I am asking about the law. It was an understanding, a tradition, a moral obligation." "A moral obligation," Hartley repeated. Her tone was scathing. "This court does not rule on tradition. It rules on facts and statutes, and the facts before me are these. The defendant, Ms. Fox, paid her own way and the way of her entire family for 2 decades. She was then told, by her own mother, to leave. She complied. She was then harassed, by her sister, to continue paying rent on a property she no longer occupied. She refused. Now she is being sued for stealing a business she has demonstrably built with her own 2 hands and years of expertise." She looked at my mother and Vanessa. Her gaze was so cold. I felt it from across the room. "This lawsuit is not just frivolous. It is an act of breathtaking extortion. It is a gross, unconscionable abuse of the judicial process." She banged her gavel. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "All claims against the defendants, Rachel Fox and Noah Voss, are dismissed, with prejudice." Venable's face was ashen. "Your Honor, the matter of—" "I'm not finished," Hartley said. "This court finds that the plaintiffs, Elaine and Vanessa Fox, have filed this suit in bad faith. I am therefore granting the defendant's motion for reasonable legal fees to be paid in full by the plaintiffs." The sound my mother made was a small, strangled gasp. Vanessa looked like she was going to be sick. They had to pay us. They had no money. The trap they had set for me had just snapped shut on them. "We are adjourned," Hartley said, and swept out of the room. The tension broke. I felt all the air leave my body, and I sagged in my chair, my hands covering my face. Noah's hand found mine. It was warm and steady. I wasn't happy. I wasn't triumphant. I didn't feel a sense of victory, just a profound, hollow relief, a feeling of a terrible, crushing weight being lifted. We had won. We had won the right to simply be left alone. We had won the right to live our own lives. Daniel Price packed his briefcase. He nodded at us, a small, satisfied smile on his face. "Congratulations, Rachel, Noah, now you can get back to work." We walked out of the courtroom, past my mother and sister, who were now in a furious, whispered argument with their lawyer. I didn't look at them. We stepped out of the courthouse and into the bright, cold afternoon. I took a deep breath. The first one that didn't feel tight in my chest in 6 weeks. It was just another Tuesday. The local news wasn't there. No one cared about this small, ugly family squabble. But for me, it was history. It was the day I had officially, legally, and finally bought my own life back. I didn't know it then, but the gavel in that courtroom had sent a shockwave. As we drove home, the bank's foreclosure department, which had been holding off during the pending litigation my family had initiated, was notified of the dismissal. The timer they had paused just started ticking again, only this time it was counting down much, much faster. The victory in court wasn't a celebration, it was a closing. It was the sound of a heavy iron door slamming shut on the first half of my life. There was no party, no champagne. We paid Daniel's final invoice, which was significantly less than the judgment he'd won for us, and the money my family was forced to pay covered our entire legal expense, with a few $100s left over. We bought 2 new soldering stations and a high-grade pipe threader. We went back to work, but the work was different. The desperation was gone. The frantic, terrified energy of scrambling to build something before our past caught up and tore it down. It was replaced by a quiet, focused determination. We weren't running from anything anymore. We were building toward something. 2 months after the court date, I was standing over a complex audio mixer at the lab, a headache pounding behind my eyes that had nothing to do with the electronics. I felt a wave of nausea so sudden and intense that I had to grab the workbench. I'd been tired for weeks, a bone-deep weariness I'd blamed on the stress of the lawsuit. But this was new. I looked at the calendar on my phone. I was 6 weeks late. That night, I showed Noah the 2 positive pregnancy tests. He didn't speak. He just sat on the edge of our new mattress. His shoulders slumped. I knew what he was thinking. We were finally stable. We were finally breathing. And now, this, a baby, a wonderful, terrifying, expensive new variable. He looked up, and his eyes weren't scared. They were resolved. "Okay," he said, his voice quiet. He stood up and pulled me into a hug. "Okay, a baby. We can do this." "But the business, Noah," I whispered into his shoulder. We're still in the spare room. We don't have anything." "Then we'd better get building," he said. He pulled back, his hands on my shoulders. "We can't be Fox and Voss Repair from a spare bedroom anymore, not with a baby on the way. It's time to get a shop." It was a risk, a huge one, but the pregnancy, which should have made us more cautious, made us bolder. We had a new deadline, a hard one. We couldn't afford our own storefront, not on a main street, but Noah found a solution, a light industrial park in East Briar, a few miles from our townhouse. It was a business co-op, a large warehouse space divided among 3 small businesses. We would share the rent, the utilities, and the street address with a custom t-shirt printer and a woman who ran a small batch pottery kiln. Our section was 1,000 square feet of concrete floor, high ceilings, and most importantly, a roll-up garage door. It was perfect. We signed the lease. We drained the Origin account again. The first thing we did was paint. We painted the walls a clean, bright white. We built heavy-duty shelving for my components and Noah's fittings. We built 2 massive, sturdy workbenches, and on the outside, next to the t-shirt logo and the pottery sign, we hung our own. Fox and Voss Repair, Co., in clean black, sans serif letters. It was real. We had a key. We had a physical space in the world that was ours. The second bedroom in our townhouse, the Fox Fix Lab, suddenly felt small. It felt like a memory. I looked at the single window, the one that looked out on the courtyard. I knew, instantly, what this room would become. With a real shop, we had to get real. My black and white ledger was a history book. We needed a system for the future. We spent a weekend building it. We bought a massive whiteboard and divided it into columns. Incoming, in progress, awaiting parts, and ready for pickup. We created carbon copy repair tickets. Every job got a number, every job got a tag, every job got a clear estimate. No more $75 quoted in a doorway. We were pricing parts and labor, with our state business license and insurance number printed at the bottom of every invoice. My old, scorned-upon skill for bookkeeping became the central nervous system of our company. I spent my evenings not at a soldering station, but at our kitchen table. Our folding table now replaced by a sturdy second-hand wooden one. I logged every invoice into a software program. I tracked every expense, every part, every single cent. I reconciled our bank account to the penny. I handled the payroll, which consisted of just me and Noah. I handled the sales tax. This was the skill they had ignored, this meticulous, obsessive attention to the numbers. Back then, it was a desperate act of self-preservation, just to prove I wasn't crazy. Now, it was our greatest weapon. It was how we stayed alive. The new shop, the new professionalism, it changed things. Our clients noticed. We weren't just Rachel and Noah anymore. We were Fox and Voss. Maria at the Bean Anchor was our first. "Now that you're a real company," she said, "I want a real contract. I want to pay you a monthly fee. And I want you to come in once every quarter to clean the grinders, check the wiring on the espresso machine, and just Make sure nothing breaks on a Saturday. She was our first maintenance contract. We signed her for $75 a month, a print shop down the street, the one that used volatile, finicky thermal transfer machines. Heard about it. They signed on for $150 a month. Soon, we had 2 other coffee shops and a small bakery. It was $800 a month of guaranteed, predictable income before we fixed a single new thing. It was our foundation. We had one new rule. It was our golden rule, and it was absolute. We had gotten a call from a different daycare, the one in Redridge, to fix a set of networked, classroom monitoring baby cameras. I'd held the phone, the job details in my hand. It's for the infant room, the director had said. The cameras keep freezing. I pictured a baby in a crib. I pictured a camera freezing, and I felt a cold, professional dread that had nothing to do with electronics. I'm sorry, I'd told her. Our insurance doesn't cover work on life safety or childcare monitoring equipment. It's a liability we can't take on. It was a lie. Our insurance covered it, but I had made a decision. We don't do jobs involving kids, I told Noah. Not security, not monitors, not toys. Nothing where a failure on our part could hurt someone small. Our work has to be perfect, but I won't take that chance. He agreed. We stuck to commercial and residential, cash registers, coffee machines, sound systems, and plumbing. Our integrity was all we had. The Origin account started to grow again, but this time, we split it. Half went to business reinvestment. The other half went into a new, personal savings account. I named it Sprout. It was the baby's fund. It was for a crib, and a car seat, and a future. Our marketing was still, and always, our work. That first job, the Bean Anchor POS fix, had become a legend in the East Briar small business community. We called it our 60-minute case study. We could trace almost 40% of our new clients back to that one. Single emergency call. Maria telling the bookstore owner telling his distributor. We had built a reputation not on flyers, but on being the people who actually showed up and actually fixed it. And finally, 6 months after the court case, 3 months pregnant, we took the business reinvestment money and bought the truck. It wasn't new. It was a 5-year-old white cargo van with 70,000 miles on it and a dent in the side. It was ugly, and it was perfect. We spent a weekend installing heavy-duty metal shelving, customizing it for our tools. Noah welded a rack to the roof. I printed a vinyl decal with our logo and applied it, very carefully, to the side doors. Noah stood back, looked at the van, and smiled. "She's beautiful," he said. He patted the dented fender. "I'm calling her Bolt, like, a lightning bolt, because we're fast." "Or a nut and bolt," I said, smiling, "because we fix things." "Both," he agreed. That evening, I was at the kitchen table, entering the receipt for Bolt into our books. My phone buzzed. It wasn't the business line. It was my personal phone. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, Rach, it's Sarah, from ArcLight." I hadn't spoken to Sarah in, almost a year. We were line mates, not friends. "Hey, Sarah," I typed. "Long time? Everything okay?" The reply came instantly. "Yeah, fine. Hey, weird question. I got a call today from a credit card company, asking for Vanessa Fox. They were looking for her. I told them I hadn't seen you guys in ages." I sat up, my back rigid. "Why would they call you?" "She listed me as a reference on an application like a year ago. I just said yes, whatever. But the guy sounded intense, like collections intense. Said she was unresponsive. Listen, I don't want any trouble, but I just remembered you telling me she was into some high-risk investment thing right after she left school. You guys aren't in trouble, are you?" My blood ran cold. "High-risk investment," I typed back. "No trouble. Sarah, we're not in touch with her. Thanks for the heads up." I put the phone down, my hand shaking slightly. Vanessa disappeared from social media. Now, collections calls. It was a problem, and for the first time in my life, I knew, with absolute certainty, that it was not my problem. I looked at the text message, the vague, dark shape of another impending disaster, and I deleted it. A few days later, a photo appeared in my social media feed, posted by an old Red Ridge acquaintance. It was a picture of a house, my old house, 214 Oakmere Lane. There was a large, brightly colored sign staked in the overgrown lawn. Public auction, it read, with a date 3 weeks away. I stared at the picture, the peeling paint, the weeds, the sign. I waited for the feeling, the guilt, the sadness, the anger, the fear. Nothing came. It was just a house, a building I used to know. It had no more emotional power over me than a picture of a random, foreclosed-upon stranger's home. I felt nothing. I realized, in that moment, that freedom wasn't just a single event, like winning in court or moving out. It wasn't a destination. It was a habit. It was a muscle you had to build. It was the daily, conscious act of checking your own books, driving your own van, and building your own life. It was the act of seeing a text message about someone else's debt and knowing, deep in your bones, that it wasn't yours to pay. I closed the app. I walked out of the kitchen and into the second bedroom. The Fox Fix Lab sign was gone. The folding table was gone. The room was empty. Waiting. I picked up a paint swatch from the dresser. A pale, soft yellow, like butter, like new sunlight. I held it up to the wall. This room had the best light in the townhouse. It was bright, it was clean, and it was ours. I was going to make it perfect. The calm lasted until I was 7 months pregnant. The nursery was painted, the soft yellow was warm and bright, and the window, the best light in the house, was finally mine. I was at the shop, sitting on a stool. I couldn't stand at the workbench for long anymore, repairing a blender for a local smoothie bar. My personal phone, the one I kept in a drawer, buzzed. I'd started carrying it again, just for doctor's appointments. A text message, from a number I didn't recognize. "You have to save the house. The bank is serious. They are taking your father's home. You are the only one who can stop this. You must." It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a signature. I knew that tone, that blend of command and martyrdom. It was Elaine. I looked at the message. I saw the words, "Your father's home," and felt a spark, not of guilt, but of cold, hard rage. The house I had paid for, the house she had kicked me out of. I deleted the text. I blocked the number. 2 days later, the real attack came. It was an email, not to me, but to the info address for Fox & Voss Repair. It was from a name I didn't recognize, a different lawyer. "Dear Sir, Madam," it began. "I am writing on behalf of my client, Ms. Vanessa Fox, the original conceptual founder of the Fox brand identity. We have been made aware of your business, Fox & Voss Repair, Co., which is an unauthorized and flagrant infringement upon her brand's intellectual property. My client's work as a wellness and lifestyle consultant is deeply tied to her family name, and your use of Fox is causing significant market confusion and diluting her brand. We demand you cease and desist all use of the Fox name within 10 business days, or we will be forced to pursue immediate legal remedies, including arbitration for all profits derived from this infringement." I read it twice. I laughed. It was so absurd, so desperate. She had lost the stolen business claim, so now she was trying to claim she owned our last name. I forwarded it to Daniel Price with a simple message. "They're back. Is this real?" His call came 10 minutes later. His voice was not amused. "Rachel, this is not just a nuisance. This is dangerous. I did some digging after our last win. I didn't want to worry you, especially with the baby, but I think this is connected." "Connected to what?" I ran a search on Vanessa. She's not just a wellness consultant. She's a debtor, a significant one, but she's also, as of 4 months ago, the founder of a limited liability corporation, a shell company. So, she's playing business. "Rachel, the company is called the Fox Trust, LLC. She registered it using the address at 214 Oakmere Lane, and she's been using that LLC to apply for corporate credit, American Express, Capital One, high limit cards, based on your old friend's call. She's likely defaulted on all of them. They're not just foreclosing on the house. They're coming after the assets of the occupants, and she, my guess is trying to build a case that you are one of those assets. I felt the baby kick, a sharp, sudden jab to my ribs. What does that mean? What is she doing? It's a fraud, Rachel. She's trying to legally tie her brand, which is just her name, to your tangible, successful, insured business. She's not trying to win. She's trying to create a legal nexus, a connection, so that when the creditor sees her assets, they can make a claim against your shop. She's trying to use you as a shield and a piggy bank. I was speechless. This was a level of deceit so complex and cold it was almost alien. What do we do? I whispered. We wait, Daniel said. She's just threatened to sue. She hasn't filed. But Rachel, lock down your credit, personal and business. Now, assume she has your social security number. The rest of the day was a blur. I called every credit agency. I placed fraud alerts. I put a freeze on my personal credit and on the businesses. I felt like I was building a digital fortress. Then, the smoking gun I needed fell right into my lap. An email came in, this time to my personal address. It was from a client, one of the print shop owners we had a contract with. Subject, F. Dotty's strange email. Hi, Rachel, he wrote. I got this bizarre email about a week ago. I was going to delete it, but after seeing your new shop sign go up, I thought, I don't know. This feels weird. I think it was meant for someone else, but she sent it to my old business email, the one I used to contact you for that first repair at the old house. I think she must have stolen my email from your old records at your parents' place. Anyway, read from the bottom. This woman is crazy. Your work is great, by the way. I scrolled down. It was a forwarded chain. The sender was Vanessa Fox. The recipient was my client. The date was from 2 months ago, before her lawyer had contacted us. It was a draft of a plan. She had clearly meant to send it to her new lawyer or someone, not to a random customer. Strategy, it read. Phase 1. Reestablish moral obligation. Send emotional appeals. Elaine. Goal. Guilt her into taking on the mortgage debt before the auction. Phase 2. If Phase 1 fails, pivot to legal. We can't use the stolen business angle again. The judge poisoned that. New angle. Brand infringement. She's using my name. The Fox brand has value. I'm a consultant. We can argue she's diluting my future earnings. We can create a legal link. Phase 3. Force arbitration. If we can tie her business, Fox and Voss, to my LLC, Fox Trust, we can offer her debt to the creditors as a disputed asset from my corporation. It's a long shot, but it might force her to settle just to get unstuck from my mess. Need to move fast before the auction. I felt sick. I was literally sick. I ran to the shop's bathroom and threw up. I forwarded the entire chain to Daniel. Call me, I wrote. His voice, when he called, was different. It wasn't calm anymore. It was cold steel. She's not just a fraud. Rachel, she's an idiot. And she's a criminal. This is a clear, written conspiracy to commit fraud. She just confessed, in writing, to her entire plan. She just gave us the gun, the bullet, and a signed confession. What now? Now, he said. We stop this. I'm taking this email, and your affidavits, and I'm going to the banks. I'm going to American Express and Capital One, to their fraud departments. We're going to report the Fox Trust, LLC, for identity theft and conspiracy to commit fraud, using your name as a disputed asset. We're not just defending you, Rachel. We're cutting her off at the source. While Daniel went on the offensive, my family's emotional war machine went into high gear. The failed text message was followed by a barrage of voicemails. From Elaine, from unknown numbers, from old neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. Rachel, it's your mother. You have to call me. Your father. He's in a county facility. He had to be moved. After you abandoned us, I couldn't care for him alone. This is your fault. You did this to him. You put your father in a home. I listened, my hand on my very pregnant belly. I felt nothing but pity. I knew, from a quick public records search, that my father had been placed in a state-assisted living facility 3 months before we left. His health had declined, and my mother, unable to care for him, had done the paperwork. She was now, a year later, blaming me for it. The emotional blackmail failed. The legal threats were backfiring. So they moved to the last resort of the desperate, public opinion. Posts started appearing in the Red Ridge Community Facebook group. Vague, ugly posts. A reminder to support your elders. Disgusted by some people who would abandon their sick father and hardworking mother just to live their dream. Some people forget where they came in. It was Elaine's voice, channeled through her friends. Our new clients in East Briar didn't see it. Our landlord didn't see it. But it was there. A smear campaign in our old hometown. I told Daniel, "Should I respond? Should I post the ledger?"
God. No, he said. Silence. Strategic silence. The only people who matter are your customers, your bank, and your landlord. They have the truth, and they have the invoices. Let the ghosts rattle their chains in the haunted house. You don't live there anymore. 2 weeks later, at 3 a.m, my water broke. Miles Voss was born on a cold, bright Wednesday morning. He was 6 pounds, 11 ounces. He was perfect. He had Noah's calm eyes and a tiny, angry, wonderful cry. When they placed him on my chest, this tiny, warm, breathing person, I felt the last lock in my heart click into place. It wasn't just about me and Noah anymore. It wasn't about the past. It was about him. I looked at Noah, who was weeping silently by the side of the bed. I put my hand on his. He will never, ever be their leverage, I whispered. He will never grow up in a house full of accusations. He will never be anyone's ATM. I swear it. My resolve, which had been forged in anger and frustration, was now tempered into something unbreakable. It was love. We brought Miles home to the nursery with the yellow walls. Life became a blur of 10-minute naps, shop invoices, and the smell of baby powder and solder. We were home for 1 week when the final letter came. Not from Venable, not from the brand lawyer, from a new third attorney. My client, Vanessa Fox, has instructed me to file for binding arbitration regarding the Fox brand trademark. It read, "She is willing to settle this matter to avoid further public embarrassment." I laughed, reading it while breastfeeding Miles. I called Daniel. "She's got a new lawyer. She's demanding arbitration." There was a long pause on the line. Then, Daniel chuckled. It was a cold, sharp sound. "She's an amateur. Rachel, she thinks arbitration is a secret, private way to shake you down. She doesn't want this in court. Not after last time, and not after my calls to Amex. So what do? Agree to it?" "No," Daniel said, his voice full of sudden, cheerful energy. "We do the opposite. We demand a public hearing. We file an emergency injunction against the Fox Trust, LLC, for fraudulent misrepresentation. And we attach that email she sent your client. We want this in a courtroom, a public courtroom. We're going to make her testify, under oath, to the contents of that email." He was enjoying this. "I'll file the motion today. We'll get an expedited date." He called me back an hour later. "You are not going to believe this," he said. "The only date the court had available for an expedited injunction hearing, given the impending other matters, is in 3 weeks, Tuesday, November 19th. I checked my calendar. "What's November 19th? "It's the auction date," Daniel said. "The bank is auctioning 214 Oakmere Lane on the courthouse steps at noon, and our hearing, inside the courthouse, is at 2 p.m., on the same day." I looked down at Miles, asleep in my arms. "A single day," I whispered. "1 day," Daniel agreed. "1 arrow, 2 targets. Let's finish this. Rachel, let's finish it all." The 3 weeks leading up to November 19th were not a time of fear. They were a time of engineering.
Noah took over the shop and all the baby duties, turning our townhouse into a command center for miles. While I was reassigned, I became Daniel Price's lead paralegal on the case of Fox Vies. Fox.
My days were spent at our kitchen table, not with a soldering iron, but with a scanner. I digitized every single page of my black ledger, every 19-year-old mortgage receipt, every utility bill, every property tax confirmation from the county website. I scanned the government assistance paperwork I'd found in the public record, proving Elaine had applied for and received state aid for my father's care before we ever left. The narrative of her as a helpless, abandoned victim was a demonstrable, provable lie. Daniel, meanwhile, was our strategist, the architect of the heist. "This isn't a family drama anymore, Rachel," he told me over the phone, his voice sharp. "This is a financial conspiracy. She's not a hurt sister. She's an unreliable narrator. We're not just going to prove she's wrong. We're going to prove she's a liar, using her own failed fraud as the evidence." He filed 3 motions. First, he petitioned the court to allow video and projection equipment for our hearing. The other side's new lawyer, a cheap, hourly guy named Peterson, didn't object, probably assuming he could use it. Daniel's stated reason was, the complex nature of the brand identity claim requires visual aids. The real reason was that he wanted to project Vanessa's Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 email onto a wall, 10 feet high. Second, he subpoenaed our witnesses, not as character references, but as professional experts. Maria from the Bean Anchor, the owner of the print shop. They weren't coming to say I was nice. They were coming to testify, under oath, about the technical, specialized labor I performed. They were the wall that would shatter Vanessa's "I gave her the idea" fantasy. Third, and this was the masterstroke, Daniel made a call to the bank's auction office, a simple, procedural inquiry. "Hi," I heard him say, his voice mild. "I'm an attorney representing a party with an interest in the assets attached to 214 Oakmere Lane. I just need to confirm your standard procedure. Will all liens and debts attached to the property and its registered occupants be read publicly prior to the sale?" He listened, then smiled. "They will? Including corporate debts, like, say, an LLC registered at that address? Fantastic. Yes, thank you for your time." He hung up and looked at me. The trap is set. The bank, in its glorious bureaucratic transparency, will do our work for us. They will publicly announce Vanessa's fraudulent debt on the courthouse steps at noon. "But who will hear it?" I asked. "Who cares?" Daniel said. "It becomes a public record, a verifiable event." The night before, I didn't sleep. I sat in the yellow nursery, rocking Miles, listening to his soft, even breathing. I was terrified, but it was a different fear. It wasn't the fear of a victim, it was the fear of a performer. Right before the curtain goes up, did I check every connection? Did I do the math? Will the plan hold? November 19th, I left the house at 8 a.m. Noah kissed me at the door. "You're not Rachel Fox, the daughter, today," he said, holding Miles. "You're Rachel Fox, the CEO. Go save your company." The courthouse was buzzing, but not for us. Just the usual Tuesday traffic. Courtroom 3B again. Judge Hartley was presiding. I saw her name on the docket and felt a surge of relief. She was not a woman who suffered fools. Vanessa, Elaine, and Peterson were already there. Vanessa looked thin, her wellness aesthetic replaced by a severe black suit. She was pale. Elaine was staring straight ahead, her face a mask of bitter resentment. "All rise," the bailiff said. The morning was a blur of legal procedure. Peterson went first, his voice droning. He tried to build a case for brand dilution. He claimed Vanessa, as the Fox Trust, had been building a lifestyle brand, and our blue-collar repair shop was tarnishing the aspirational luxury quality of her name. He presented her social media posts, the ones from after we left, as evidence of her established brand. "She has clients," he argued, "who now associate her name with pipe threading." Judge Hartley looked at him over her glasses. "Her clients, Mr. Peterson?
Do you have invoices? A list of these clients? Peterson said, shuffling. The brand is in its early stages. It's about future earnings, Your Honor. So, she has no clients, Hartley stated. And no earnings. Understood, Mr. Price? Daniel stood. Your Honor, he said. We'd like to show the actual copyright, the actual work. He pointed to the projector. The screen lit up. The first slide was a high-resolution photograph of a complex circuit board, a red circle around one of my clean, perfect solder joints. This, Daniel said, is Rachel Fox's work. This is the brand. It's not an idea. It's not a lifestyle. It is a high-level diagnostic technical skill. He clicked. The next slide was a scanned page from a repair manual I had written for our shop, a detailed, step-by-step process for diagnosing a faulty power supply, complete with schematics I had drawn myself. Click, a video. It was me, at the workbench in our new shop, my hands moving with practiced, economical speed, repairing the motherboard of a cash register. Click, another video. Noah, installing a complex water filtration system. This is Fox & Voss Repair, Daniel said. It's not an aspirational idea. It's a functioning, profitable, insured business, built on 20 years of my client's documented experience. Then he called Maria. She was a terrible public speaker, which made her perfect. She was just real. She told the story of the Saturday her register died. I was finished, she said, looking at the judge. My whole weekend, gone, Rachel. Rachel Fox came in, took the whole thing apart on my counter, and rebuilt the inside of it with, like, a glue gun and a wire. In 30 minutes, she didn't inspire me. She saved my business. The print shop owner said the same. By 11:30, Daniel had presented an irrefutable, physical mountain of evidence. He had proven, beyond any doubt, that our business was built on my labor, not Vanessa's ideas. We'll break for lunch, Judge Hartley announced. Reconvene at 2 p.m. It was 11:45, Phase 2. I didn't get lunch. I walked out of the courtroom, my heels clicking on the tile, and went straight to the main lobby, and then out the front doors. The courthouse steps were crowded, a different kind of energy, not lawyers, but bottom feeders, investors in cheap suits, landlords, a few curious onlookers, and, in the center, a man in a windbreaker with a clipboard and a portable microphone, the auctioneer. I stood at the back of the crowd. Under a tree, I just watched. At noon, the auctioneer started. All right, folks, we're starting the docket. First property, 214 Oakmere Lane, Redridge, a 3-bed, 1.5 bath. Opening bid, $180,000, subject to outstanding liens. A murmur. That was high for a foreclosure. Per county disclosure rules, the auctioneer droned. The property is being sold as is, with all outstanding debts and encumbrances. These include, he looked at his clipboard, an outstanding primary mortgage of $110,000, a county tax lien of $6,400, a utility lien of $800. He took a breath. And 2 outstanding unsecured corporate credit liens, registered to the Fox Trust, LLC, at this address, Capital One, for $18,500, and American Express, for $26,320. A man next to me whistled. Geez, someone maxed out the cards before they skipped town. I saw her, an old neighbor, Mrs. Gallo. She lived across the street from the house. She was standing on the edge of the crowd, holding her phone up, the little red live icon glowing. She was live streaming on Facebook to the Redridge community group. I watched, my heart hammering, as the auctioneer read out the name, the Fox Trust, LLC, again. He read the credit card numbers, redacting the first few. It was real. It was public. It was happening. No one bid. The starting price, plus the $50,000 in credit card debt and liens, made the house worthless. No bids? The auctioneer called. No bids? Sold.
Back to the bank." He banged a small wooden gavel. It was over. The house was gone. I turned and walked back inside. I didn't feel a thing. I was a soldier, and the second part of the mission was complete. At 2 p.m., we were all back in our seats. The energy in the room had changed. Peterson, Vanessa's lawyer, was checking his phone, his face pale. Vanessa and Elaine were whispering furiously. They knew. The Facebook stream, the community group, the public humiliation. "Mr. Price," Judge Hartley said, "you may continue." "Thank you, Your Honor," Daniel said, standing. "In light of the plaintiff's claims of brand dilution, new evidence has just become publicly available that speaks directly to the plaintiff's pattern of fraudulent misrepresentation. This evidence is critical to understanding the true nature of this brand claim." "Objection," Peterson said, leaping up. "New evidence? This is an ambush." "Is it relevant, Mr. Price?" Hartley asked. "It is, Your Honor," Daniel said, his voice ringing with confidence. "It is the official public auction record for 214 Oakmere Lane, which just concluded at noon today, on your own courthouse steps. It includes a list of outstanding debts. I have a certified copy of the auctioneer's public transcript." He handed it to the bailiff, who handed it to the judge. Hartley read it. Her face did not change, but her eyes narrowed. She looked up at Peterson. "This evidence is directly relevant to the financial claims of a corporate entity, the Fox Trust, which you, Mr. Peterson, have just spent all morning arguing is a viable, valuable brand. Objection overruled. The record is admitted." Daniel turned on the projector. He didn't show the video. He didn't show the ledger. He showed the text of the auctioneer's transcript, blown up 20 feet high. "Outstanding unsecured corporate credit liens, registered to the Fox Trust, LLC, Capital One, for $18,500, and American Express, for $26,320. The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear Elaine's sharp, panicked breathing. "Your Honor," Daniel said, his voice a quiet, lethal weapon. "The plaintiff, Vanessa Fox, has not been building a brand. She has been building a mountain of debt under a fraudulent LLC, using her parents' home as a mailing address. This entire lawsuit is not about brand dilution. It is the phase 3 of a written conspiracy to commit fraud." "Objection. Conspiracy?" Peterson was sweating. "I have the email, Mr. Peterson," Daniel said. "Would you like me to project that too?" Peterson sat down. Daniel turned to Vanessa. "Ms. Fox," he said, though he was not questioning her. "Is this the aspirational brand you're referring to? $50,000 in defaulted credit cards? Is that the future earnings you claim my clients are tarnishing?" Vanessa started. But Judge Hartley cut her off. The judge wasn't looking at Daniel. She was looking, with a white-hot, furious intensity, at my sister. "Ms. Fox," Judge Hartley said, her voice dangerously calm, "I have one question for you, and I suggest you answer it carefully. Why did you use your family name, the Fox name, to establish a corporate trust without any legal authorization from the other members of that name? Why did you use a name you share with the defendant, a defendant whose successful, insured business you just happened to be trying to tie to your own debts?" Vanessa looked at her lawyer. He was staring at his legal pad. He had no answers. She looked at her mother, Elaine, the woman who had commanded, who had hissed, who had emotionally blackmailed me for 20 years. She had shrunk. She was looking down at her own hands in her lap, her face gray. She was, for the first time, a small, old woman, her power gone, her greatest weapon revealed as a fraud. Vanessa looked back at the judge. She opened her mouth. No sound came out. The wall, the one built on her charm and her potential, the one my money had reinforced for 2 decades, had just collapsed, and it had collapsed not in the privacy of our living room, but in a public courtroom, under oath, with the receipts projected on the wall. Judge Hartley's question hung in the air, sharp and heavy as an axe.
Why did you use a name you share with the defendant? A defendant whose successful insured business you just happened to be trying to tie to your own debts? Vanessa's mouth was open. Her eyes darted to Peterson, who was pointedly studying his notes. Having completely abandoned her, she looked at our mother. Elaine was staring at her own hands, her face gray, her entire posture one of collapse. The puppet master had found her strings cut, and the puppet was looking for help that would never come.
I, Vanessa stammered. It's my name, too.
It is, Judge Hartley said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, which was somehow more terrifying than a shout. And you have managed to drag it, and your families, through $50,000 of defaulted credit card debt. You have used it as a shield to commit what this court can only describe as a bad faith, malicious, and fraudulent attempt to extort an innocent party, a party who, as evidence has shown, supported you for most of your adult life. She picked up her gavel. This wasn't a deliberation. This was a sentence. The court rules as follows, she said, her eyes fixed on Vanessa. The plaintiff's demand for arbitration is denied. The plaintiff's claim of brand infringement is dismissed with prejudice. The court finds zero evidence of brand dilution. In fact, the court finds the only party bringing disrepute to the Fox name is the plaintiff herself. My lawyer, Daniel, stood up. Your Honor, the matter of love. I am not finished, Mr. Price. Daniel sat. This court hereby declares that the business name Fox and Voss Repair Co., its operational processes, its client lists, and its associated trade dress are the sole and exclusive property of the defendants, Rachel Fox and Noah Voss. The plaintiff, Vanessa Fox, has zero claim to them, intellectual or otherwise, now or in perpetuity. It was a clean kill, a total victory. Furthermore, Judge Hartley continued, this court finds that this lawsuit was, like the one before it, frivolous, vexatious, and filed in bad faith. The plaintiffs, Vanessa Fox and Elaine Fox, are hereby ordered to pay the defendants full legal and court costs associated with this hearing. And finally, she said, looking at Peterson with pure disgust, this court is formally recommending that the District Attorney's Office, as well as the Commercial Fraud Divisions of American Express and Capital One, open an investigation into the activities of the corporate entity known as the Fox Trust, LLC, for conspiracy to commit financial fraud. A court officer, the man who had been standing by the door, walked over and handed a piece of paper to the bailiff, who handed it up to the judge. She glanced at it, her expression unchanged. And it seems, she said, with a final, dry twist of the knife, that the bank has officially retaken possession of the property at 214 Oakmere Lane as of 12:30 p.m. today. The debt that you, Ms. Fox, attempted to leverage onto your sister is now entirely and publicly your own. This matter is concluded. She banged the gavel. It was done, all of it. The house, the debt, the claims, gone. Vanessa made a sound, a high, thin wail, and buried her face in her hands. But it was my mother's reaction that I will remember. Elaine didn't look at Vanessa. She didn't look at the judge. She looked at me, across the courtroom. Her eyes met mine, and she began to cry. They were not the performative, staged tears I had seen her use to manipulate me. They were not the tears of a grieving mother. They were the desperate, ugly, gasping tears of an addict whose supply has just been cut off. She wasn't crying because she had lost the house. The house was just a building. She was crying because she had lost the leverage, the mortgage, the taxes, the guilt, the family duty, the tools she had used to bleed me dry for 20 years. They were all gone. The bank owned the house. The court had freed me. She had no more claims on me. I was, finally, no longer her ATM, and she was, finally, bankrupt. I stood up. My legs were shaking. Your Honor? Everyone stopped. Judge Hartley looked at me, her expression softening for the first time. Yes, Ms. Fox? I'm not here for revenge. I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I'm just here for the truth. I'd like to make one final statement. Not with words. I have a short video. It's 30 seconds long. May I? The judge looked at Daniel. Daniel nodded. I'll allow it, Hartley said. Daniel clicked the laptop. He brought up the final file. It was a video I had taken with my old phone. It was the repair of the bean anchor POS system. The first real job. My hands, moving quickly, the burnt capacitors, the splice, the wires, the final click as I reset the data cable, and then the screen, flickering to life, the boot-up chime, the welcome screen. I didn't say anything. I just let it play. The courtroom was silent. The only sound was the whir of the projector fan. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a gotcha. It was a non-verbal, irrefutable declaration. It was my manifesto. This is what I do. This is who I am. I am not an idea. I am not an inspiration. I am a worker. I am the hands that fix things, and this is my value. The video ended. The screen went black. Judge Hartley nodded at me, a single, slow, respectful gesture. Thank you, Ms. Fox. You are excused. We walked out. We didn't run. Daniel packed his briefcase. I walked past my mother and sister, who were now being served with the notice to pay our legal fees by the court officer. I didn't look back. In the hallway, Daniel shook my hand. Rachel, Noah, thank you, Daniel, I said, for everything, for seeing the timeline. My pleasure, he said, that small, dry smile returning. Now, first thing tomorrow, you're coming to my office. We're filing the trademark paperwork for Fox and Voss Repair, and we are restructuring your business as a full S-Corp LLC. We're building a fortress. This, he gestured back at the courtroom, never happens again. I stepped out of the heavy courthouse doors and into the late afternoon. The November air was cold and sharp, and the sun was low, casting long shadows. And there he was, Noah, standing on the bottom step, bolt parked at the curb behind him. He wasn't alone. He had the baby carrier strapped to his chest, and Miles was sound asleep inside, his tiny face peaceful. Noah looked up at me. He didn't ask. He just knew. He saw it on my face. I walked down the steps. I didn't cry. I just breathed. I breathed. And for the first time, the air didn't feel heavy. I reached out and put my hand on Miles's back, feeling his small, warm weight. It's over, I whispered. Noah put his arm around me. Welcome home, Rach. The low, golden, late afternoon sun hit the side of my face. It was the same light, I realized. The same warm, clear, beautiful light that I had painted the nursery with. The light I had always chased. The best light in the house. It wasn't in a room. It wasn't in a building. It was just out here, and it was free. We were walking to the van, a family, when my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. One last time. I pulled it out, a text from another new, unknown number. It was Elaine. They towed my car. Vanessa is gone. They took the house. I have nowhere to go. Mother. She had never, in my entire life, called herself Mother. I stood there on the curb, the buzz of the city in my ears, and I looked at this final, desperate attempt, the last hook. I have nowhere to go. The final plea for me to become the infrastructure once again. My fingers were steady. I didn't type. I'm sorry. I didn't type. That's awful. I didn't type. What can I do? I opened my browser. I searched Broward County Adult and Senior Services. I copied the link. I pasted it into the message. I sent her the address and the main intake phone number for the county shelter system. And then I blocked the number. That night, for the first time, Noah, Miles, and I ate dinner together at our actual table. Not a folding table, a real one. After Miles was asleep in his yellow room, I went to our office. I pulled out the fireproof safe. I took out the black and white composition book, my ledger, the record of a life spent paying someone else's debts. I turned past the pharmacy receipts, past the mortgage statements, past the tax records. I turned to the last, clean, empty page. I picked up a pen. I uncapped it. I wrote one final entry. From today forward, every invoice has only one name on it: my family. I closed the book. I put it back in the safe. I locked it, and I never opened it again. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. It means so much to me. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you really want to support the channel, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.